we
Okay.
literally have a lot of awesome shit to say already, and we didn't technically
Yeah.
even start. So I just do this the same way every single time. Tell the people who you are and what you do.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm Sarah Wahl. I'm a painter and a yoga instructor. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, but I moved to LA a long time ago, a long time ago. Yeah, and I, through the art, have been collaborating with other friends, different businesses to help give back through the art. So that's something that I'm also really passionate about.
Well, that kind of brings us to where we're at right now because, like I said, there's not been a whole lot. Well, I guess people don't realize this. We've been talking a little bit, pre-show, and I've just been just devoid of any sort of creativity or things that have been exciting me recently. But the things that have been really at least making me feel good and kind of giving me some energy is seeing people just doing good things now. Like I just need that. I need people doing good things for other people and putting that out in the world because it really has, it's gotten to a very weird place where I just see people are at each other so much. We've been
Mhm.
doing this for a year now, and
Yeah.
everybody's, on their side, their heels are dug in. And so then I see you put out a video, saying that you are a part of a fundraiser. So why don't we just go right into that? Why don't you tell everybody, what
Yeah.
you're involved in right now? I feel like putting that front and center
Friends.
early on is probably very
Yeah.
important in all this.
Well, and before I do, I'd love to touch back on what you're saying. Like, it has been a lot, and there has been a lot of heavy, but I think we're also in a really great time that it is pretty easy to give back, and it might seem daunting, but really what I've found is even if you feel like you can only give $5, or instead of your coffee for a week, you donate, it matters, and there are a lot of great ways of researching now, companies you believe in. And um, I'm not going to pretend to be, all knowing of this fundraising event, because honestly, it came to me through a friend. So when I created Wahl Art Design, I wanted it to be a space to give back. And it's been really cool how it's been just coming in. So my fellow yogi, Griselda Ramirez, told me about this fundraiser. It's called Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times. So I don't know if you had heard of that before. I
I've heard of
honestly,
Camp Ronald McDonald. I didn't know that that was the full name.
yeah, yeah, and rather it's a long name, so I try and like get it
Right.
out. But so what we're doing is I'm raffling off 2 pieces of art, and you can donate. So your donation is your raffle ticket, and we're doing that through March 31st, and then on April 2nd, we'll pick 2 names, and there will be 2 winners of some wall art, and all of the proceeds are going to the foundation. I said yes to this because they help families that have children that are going through or have undergone pediatric cancer treatment. Um, I don't have children. I can't imagine what that would be like, having your child have cancer, anybody going through that. But just, in teaching yoga and focusing on health a lot, I think it's easy for us to take that for granted, that some people right from the beginning of their life are fighting for their health. So if we can do this fundraiser, if we can help these families, because who knows how they've also been affected by COVID, and then still having their children going through this treatment, their reality shifted a lot in this time. So yeah, I have the website for it. I don't know how you want to share that, but you can donate. I have the art here. I don't know if you want to see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Go ahead. I mean, we do a video
Okay.
version. Might as well.
Yeah, yeah. So this is one of the pieces. It's an abstract piece. It's called Looking Up. So I wanted to do a smaller option because I know not everyone has a ton of space. But this is a little acrylic paint with some gold leaf that I love there. You can see the shine. So
Yeah.
that's for the raffle. And then this one's bigger. It's probably going to cover everything, but boom.
That's awesome.
This one's called Third Eye Illusion. It's a print, so normally that would be a little more expensive, and people can also get great art and just, donate 20 or $40 and help out. So yeah, that's what's happening with this fundraiser. So I can share the information, but they're really great. They normally would do a camp in person for these kids to help, gain their independence, have other kids around them that are going through the same thing. This year, everything's virtual, but I think it's really great that they're still doing the fundraiser.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so wild having the world have to just, I mean, everybody's trying to keep their models going, whatever they're doing, they're trying to, perpetuate that in some way. And then, but, now it's all has to move into this virtual space. Like
Mm.
it would be, I would actually be very interested to see what they come up with, like what the camp will be in a virtual setting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't have all of the details, but you can look it up and see what they're doing. And I even like to, tell people research before you donate, really, make sure it's something you get behind, believe in. But there have been really great things through everything have to be online. I mean, who knows if you and I would have connected and got to do this podcast virtually. I got to do another podcast with someone reconnecting from Pittsburgh as well. And we got to do topics that were just really fun and great. I teach online. And so even though the yoga studios that I worked at closed, I've had people from different countries join. I reconnected with friends on the East Coast that I hadn't seen. My parents can join, so there is stuff that, even though it's weird and we're like figuring it out, there have been some really cool things that have happened in this time as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, like we talked about, well, we'll get into like your journey and everything like that, but like you said, you weren't really doing art, not the way that you are now, until COVID. And then I was saying how like this podcast was literally born from it. Like it's the brainchild of COVID. So it's really strange, the kind, like the way that the diamonds come out of pressure,
Yeah.
so
And I also like, because I get really amped and excited about, when you get to see the fruits of your labor and the good things that come about out of it. But I don't negate, like, there were definitely times where I was spiraling. I was unsure of what was going to happen. I'm not good at sitting and being inside. I used to drive around LA teaching at like 3 different yoga studios, teaching all day. So it was really a time where I had to slow down and sit and take time. But I needed it. I'm sure everyone has their version of this story, but like physically, I had been hurting my voice so much from how much I was teaching. I had to have surgery. And I got to do that in COVID. And I had the time to slow down and actually, take the time off and have the surgery.
whoa. What was wrong with your voice?
So I always had this kind of rasp, and everyone, kind of dug the rasp, but it turns out it actually wasn't very healthy because I had a cyst on my vocal cords. And yeah, so at first, I just thought I could do some vocal therapy and my voice would get better. But then when they went back in, they saw this cyst and you can't get rid of that with therapy. So I had to have surgery on it. It's crazy. I couldn't talk for 2 weeks after. So it was like going into the hospital, being able to talk, knowing that I would come out and have to be like using my marker board and signing and finding ways to communicate.
That is so wild. When, like, how early on did you have the surgery? What month or whatever, when did you do it?
Yeah. So I found out early in the beginning of COVID that I was going to have to do this. So, but I had to do the therapy for about 3 months to help the swelling go down. It's really crazy when, maybe you do with your podcast and your work, think about, your vocal cords and how much you're using your voice. But so then I had to wait until August. So I got the surgery in August, and then really I wasn't back able to teach and speak until like mid-September.
Wow. So that's actually kind of interesting to think. Like, I'm trying to think back to August and like what my vibe was then, and just like what was I observing in August. And like obviously, like, the presidential race is still happening. And so like those tensions are high, and like, there's always talk of, a stimulus check. Maybe it's like dangling out there, and everybody's
Yeah.
like arguing, like if they want it, if not, if they don't want it, like what, it, it was a, oh, wow. Um,
I feel like we're all gonna have a different reaction when we hear stimulus check now. It's like this little,
oh man,
you know?
it's so weird. It's so weird how like wherever you get your information from is largely like what your opinion of it is formulated by.
Yeah.
Like the like I've heard so many different people kind of give me the same token line that they clearly just heard on TV, or
Yeah.
whatever podcast they listen to grabbed it from like that news outlet. Like that's just the line that they're going to toe. And I'm like, man,
Mhm.
this is so strange. It is so, so strange that like people barely even have their own thoughts about this.
Yeah. What do you find, like, for you, do you take time to like have time where you maybe look at the news and are kind of seeing what's going on and then taking time away from it? Do you find that for yourself?
Yeah, so I actually like I went to school. Most people know me that I went to school for multimedia, but like what was also a part of my major was journalism.
Okay.
So like I've always kind of had this weird interest in the news, in the fact that there it's if you sit through a couple journalism classes, for a fact what you're watching and a lot of what you're reading is not good journalism. Like there are very clear cut like journalism 101 things that you do to be a
Mhm.
good journalist. And the way the way that news and all this is kind of constructed these days, it is almost completely lacking of all of those baseline like I guess like ethics, tactics, um principles, whatever. And so yeah, over the years, and especially after how 2016 turned out and how polarizing that was with everybody, like, and I was on this like previously, but it kind of gave me a little bit more motivation to get into it. But I started doing a lot of research into independent news media, finding people who were kind of doing the job up to the standard that I, was taught was kind of the standard. And the funny part is, the more you find these people, they are smeared a lot, because it just doesn't seem like they have a side. They're not ideologically driven in any way. They're like trying to be information driven. But then people that are dug in on one side or the other, whoever you're criticizing, all of a sudden is going to attack that person, because,
Mm.
it's like the worst thing, worse than lying about the other side, is telling the truth.
Yeah. Well, no, that what you said, being information driven, we're so stuck on sides. It has to be this way or this way, and this is all there is. It's like, well, but have you heard of like the gray area, or like you can be on this side but see other things? I feel like we've really come into like it has to be a fight and you can't share opinions, or just look at the information and be impartial. I feel like teams have just really formed and people dug their heels in, and that's where we're at.
Right. And they're kind of making it part of their identity. Like it's like my what I
Yeah.
think, like what goes on in politics is not who I am. I am so much more interested on what is happening, and not what I feel about
Mhm.
what is happening. Like I can, as long as I can
There is
understand.
good happening.
What's that?
There is good happening. It's like we're only seeing the harsh and bad, and there's so much good happening.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't say that necessarily about what's going on in politics, but there's
Yeah.
definitely some good happening. But where I was getting at, why even bringing this up, was that must have been a very difficult 2 weeks to not be able to talk, considering it was a very opinionated time of the year.
Yeah. Well, and interesting to see when you're not talking, what the conversations are around you, and just getting to sit back and listen.
Right. So there's an interesting saying. It's like, light a man's house on fire and you see what he really cares about. And that makes me think of you in the sense of, like, if you were going to be communicating, I feel like you did it probably a lot less, but you did it on things that were very necessary, like things that you felt like you absolutely needed to communicate in this moment. But everything, was so much extra effort, I'm sure, that, you basically were like, well, I'm just going to, kick back on actually being like the driver of conversation, and like maybe in some moments doing like, what were the methods of, like, how are you talking? How are you getting things across to people?
My little marker board became my best friend. So, and I wrote out certain things too, because my boyfriend was very sweet and took care of me. So I had like soup, tea, bathroom, water, and so I would just point to them. And he got, like, I give him props. He really got good at reading my body language. He'd be like, you want soup, but you don't want this, and you want this, but not that, and maybe this. So we, hand signal, marker board. But then, it was funny because my family's East Coast, so they wanted to make sure it was okay, and we were still trying to talk a little bit. But I had to text them like, hey, I can't. If you ask questions, they have to be yes or no, like simple. And then somebody was like, well, how was your day? And I'm like, no, that's like, I
Right.
can't. You talk, like, this is your chance to tell me all the things you wanted to tell me. And I'm middle kid. I have a big family, so we talk a lot, and so it really was interesting, and just listening more. And I still try to practice that, because I think we could jump at the opportunity to want to talk over somebody. And so I really try and like sit back, and even when you and I are talking, just trying to be like, man, like, let someone finish their thought. I forget if this was in yoga training or where in my path this came across me, but just when you're in conversation with somebody, trying to sit back and just give them a little more time than you think they might even need, because they might not even know they need to say something yet. But if you jump over, or even if you're just agreeing verbally, they might not get out this thing that they need to say. But yes, marker board, hand signals, and just sitting back in it, and not talking as much.
That's wild. That's kind of funny that you were saying that, like, your boyfriend was like picking up like a Starbucks order's worth of nuance in, like, just like your minimalist communication. That's kind of really funny. Um
It was
well
great.
um why I because we didn't really dig, we like jumped right into the Ronald McDonald Camp for Good Times fundraiser. But why don't you give us like a little bit of a scope of what your current situation is as far as like your profession, like where are you at currently, and then we'll wind it back.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been painting for about 3 years now, but it wasn't at the forefront of my business. I've been teaching yoga for over 8 years now. And, like I said at the beginning of COVID, like that was the main thing, but I was starting to weave art into my life. And then when COVID hit, I had to figure some things out. The yoga studios closed, but luckily, I really have such an amazing yoga community of students and friends and coworkers. So I started just offering Zoom classes for a donation. I knew people were in a tough time, and so I just felt like that was like people that can give, like, give more, and people that can't, that's okay, but they're still getting their practice, because that can be really jarring. Yoga, and especially the way I was teaching, we really were a community. It's not like you just come in and it's not like we're talking. I found that some of my best friends came from yoga. And so we wanted to keep that community. And that's why I chose Zoom rather than like Instagram Live or even Facebook Live, because we talk a little bit in the beginning, we talk at the end. Obviously, if people have to jump off, they go. But sometimes people, I'll just be like, how's your day? What's going on? Like give me a little something before we just jump right into yoga. So it helped us. And then people saw their friends. They were like, oh my God, like I haven't seen you, and they say hi. So that's really helped keep the community. And even my first art show was one of my yoga students, like opened up his house. So we did just like art show at his house. We hung up everything on the walls, and that was kind of how it started. And then I submitted to other shows in LA. And then through COVID, a friend was just like, why don't you just make a wall art Instagram? And so I've been selling from that platform, and I just signed a contract to be selling with some online stores and hopefully in-person stores. So it's really just kind of, yeah, it's crazy. I'm like, are people just staring at their walls more? But I really do feel like a lot of my yoga students started off being my clients, but then man, I don't know. Just a lot of East Coast people were buying my stuff. Over the holidays, a lot of husbands buying for their wives good gifts, commissioning pieces. And I love it. I love seeing where people choose to hang their art. I love the conversations around it. I feel really lucky that I'm in the beginning of this, where it's still like, I'm delivering you your art, or I'm shipping it with a note. And I really like that interaction with people, because art's, a really intimate thing to be buying. I'm at least in a place where I get to hear like why people were drawn to what they bought, what it means to them, where they're hanging it, whether it was the title of a piece that drew them to it, or just the colors or the design. So yeah, so through COVID, I'm able to do my two passions, and I feel really, really grateful for that, and I don't take it for granted.
Well, you have a very convenient last
That was a
name.
lot.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a very
Yeah,
convenient last
I
name
get
for your
excited about it, so
business.
I'm like checking my phone. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, Wahl art. That was
yeah, it really just it comes together all on its own. Um, so I mean, we might as well wind it back. You said you've been doing yoga for about 8 years. Did you do anything like what was, I guess, like where would you say like your professional life really started? Where would you plant that flag and then, start navigating your way into yoga, that which then, gets you into painting and whatnot?
yeah. Um I feel like I've had an interesting journey. I mean, so I moved from Pittsburgh right at 18. I had never been to California. I just wanted an adventure, and I auditioned for an acting conservatory. I never even went to look at the school before going. And God bless my parents for like supporting that. I was like, no, I just want to move. They're like, you don't want to see the school first. So I was like, no, I'm
she's
just
got
gonna.
a she's got a dream and a twinkle in her eye.
Those eyes must have been twinkling because they were like, okay. So I did that for a while. My school offered these like stage combat stunt fighting classes. And so I got really into that. And I did that for a while. And I thought that I was going to teach that. I thought that was kind of the path. I was like, interning at these stunt schools, and I booked a couple jobs doing that. I'm only 5 feet tall, so my stunt jobs were for kids. Um, so
Or Tom
that
Cruise.
worked out. What?
I said, or Tom Cruise.
Or Tom Cruise. So yeah, I got to do like, some stunt tumbling on a Nickelodeon show, which was really cool. But then that world, I was like, man, that's just not, I know myself pretty well, and I was reading the energy there, and it just was like, I don't think this is it. I liked the fighting stuff, but to really get somewhere with that, you either need to be a teacher or a choreographer. And I was like, I don't think this is it. And honestly, I went into like the bar scene for a bit. I was just like cocktailing, saving money, traveling, and really unsure a little bit in mid-20s, and then I started going to yoga, and I was just going. They were always talking about these trainings, and I like kept an ear out, and I was like, man, I don't know. And then decided to book the trip, and really it went from being in the acting world, stunt fighting, getting a little lost and unsure, and then finding yoga, and really I started a health and wellness business at the same time. So I felt like I got to get out of like stunt fighting, bar scene. I did comedy, stand-up comedy a little bit, and into what just felt like the next part. I'm not putting any of that down, you know, that
Right.
was like a part of my life, but then the yoga and the health and wellness just seemed like the next step and a new chapter.
I want to like just roll back on that stand-up comedy a little bit. Like tell me more about that, because I do listen to a lot of comedians on their podcasts. I just find them like all they do is talk, right? You know, they go up on stage and they're such good showmen uh that that it translates so well in podcasts. And some of them are very like they're super intelligent because it's kind of what like comedy like demands now. There's not like too many like slapsticky silly comedians. Like you have to have a very interesting and like poignant angle at something that then becomes, you know, reveals itself as very funny.
Yeah.
So like what was that like being in like the comedy world?
Dude, it's crazy. I was getting headshots done with this woman, and we were just having a good time, and she was like, "You're kind of funny." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Okay." Told me about this class. It was called Pretty Funny Women. And so I took this class, and you got to like learn how to form a joke. You got to learn how to get a set together, and then at the end of this was a show. Our first show was 100 people in this little um, spot in Burbank, California. It's called Flappers. And dude, I knew I was going first. She didn't tell anybody. She was like, I'm not going to tell you the lineup until like the night of. And in my brain, I was just like, I'm going first. I knew it. And we get there, and I feel like my body went cold. I like blacked out and just, you know, did my set, but it was like somebody took over my body. Um, that being said, like when you're in that world, you have to be hustling. You're going to open mics every night. People are hitting up more than one open mic. Um, Men are amazing, but very male dominated. So, you know, around a lot of dudes in the bar scene again. And I find that like the best comics to me would be people, I don't even know what they were talking about, but if they seem grounded in themselves, they could tell you about nothing and you're with them. Then you feel the vibe when somebody's trying too hard. It's like dick joke, you know, and you're like, oh God, it just like
Right.
make
A
it
little
stop.
cringy.
Um, yeah. So the best ones are like grounded in yourself, but I'm really glad I did it because it's scary as shit. You know, first open mic, I think I just told like a long, embarrassing story about a date I went on with a chick that I was like, I don't know, is this a lesbian thing? Like I was so nervous, and I realized though, like you got to be on the hustle, and I think I was just curious about it. I wasn't wanting to go to bars every night, work these open mics. But I have friends that are like still doing it from, you know, if I would have kept doing it and they got on like Conan and they're killing it. So you really can get out there now. It's really possible if you're good and you got the hustle. But it's have you ever done an open mic or thought about it?
No, I don't know if I would be good at performing, like being on stage and doing it, but I think I could be a writer. I do think that I would be
Yeah.
good in a writing room, but I'm not so sure that I'd be good at actually like delivering the punchlines. I feel like so the only time I ever did anything on stage was I was in a band and I was a singer for it. So but you don't have to be
Okay.
anybody, right? You just perform the song. You hit the notes, you say the words, and you know you nail it. So that's but then I feel like there's some, and I'm sure you know, I'm probably you know I'm probably poo pooing on myself here, thinking that yeah, enough practice and I'd probably break this habit or whatever. But I probably put on some sort of like an act that doesn't like
Mm.
even if I had a good set, like even if I had like everything that I wrote was really good and I have really good bits, like, but I would probably put on some sort of an act that would then like deter from like the actual quality of it, and that would be something that I would just have to break out of. But I don't know, like I think that's something that I would do nervously. I'd get on stage and it's like
Yeah.
not something I practice. I'm like, I'm gonna be this guy. Like I'm gonna be some guy on
You're like,
stage.
why am I talking like
Like I
this?
don't talk like this.
Like, I don't know. I went out and I had a British accent.
Yeah. Like all of a sudden you're just Madonna, you're just talking in a British accent. You're like,
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, there have been many waves to my life and different gigs for sure.
well, that's cool. So you do comedy and you get into the yoga scene. Um, like where, I mean, you've been in it for 8 years. So like, wind me through that. How do you get into it? Like, had you been did you like get your certification like kind of for fun, and then it turned into like I'm gonna be a
I
yoga
think I
teacher
was
now, or what?
looking, yeah, I was looking for answers. I was looking for something, I still remember being in my yoga training. It was this beautiful yoga resort in Mexico, and I'm fighting between like I wanted to be there and I really believed in it, and I also was like, I think I'm still partying, and I think I'm not done with this, part of my life. And so I was feeling torn. And I share that because like it's not just like I was like, yoga, and this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna live this life. I felt, a little bit torn there. But then the more I saw how it was helping people and the more I got to know my students, I was just like, man, there's something here and there's something to this. And I think I wish I had yoga in my life at a younger age. I think it would be great to be like, we all had to go to gym class and you play the weird games, or it was like gym class or lifting weights, And if yoga was incorporated, I just think you learn so much about yourself, connecting the mind and the body. And so it took me a little bit of time. You do your training and then you do these practice classes. But yeah, I definitely think, full honesty, that I was going through the motions a little bit in the beginning. And I also felt like a lot of my clients were older than me. And so how do you find your voice when you're supposed to be standing and leading this room? And I felt like, who knows what people were thinking, but you fill your head with the judgments. And I'm like, oh, they're probably like, what does she know? And what does she have to share? So it took a really long time to stand in the fact that like I do have something to offer and I do have something to say, and I'm worthy to be up here and helping you through. Because really the teacher is just the guide. Like the work you come out, you roll the mat out, like you could go through the moves and be somewhere else in your head, So
Right.
you're there facilitating and holding space for people, but the work comes from them.
That's an interesting way of like diving into that. So, and also like, it's funny to be able to ask you this in this way, but like you did stand up comedy, so you've been up in front of a room before and kind of like commanded attention and tried to, like a lot of comedians like basically call it like not manipulating the room, but being able to, but eventually finding that like frequency that everybody's on to kind of get them into the same flow that like you're trying to drive them to. Did that help at all?
Yeah, for sure. And you can tell, it's like read the room.
Yeah.
Read the room. You might write a whole set, for a specific crowd, and then you're in there and you're like, I got to make something up because this is not what's happening. Some days in class, you can find that like, wow, people really need a joke here. We really need a laugh because it's hard. You're in there, you're working hard. So sometimes a joke just helps lighten it up. You can tell when sometimes you need a little more nurturing energy and it's not a joke vibe. And it's like, okay, let's hold space in this way. So I think it definitely helped me, doing stand up helped me hold that space and keep it honest when you're teaching. Some days I'm sure too, when you're doing your podcast, like you're in it, you're on, and some days you might be like, man, I'm a little off or my energy is here. It's like, how do you recognize that, but then still realize the job that needs to be done? So I think as a teacher, there's the same thing. Some days I might be tired or have just had a personal thing happen right before class, but you have to hold space for these people. They're coming for their one yoga practice that day. So I think it's finding how to be authentic, honor where you're at, but still hold space for other people.
Right on. So have you ever owned like your own studio, or you were just kind of always utilizing other people's spaces?
Yeah, utilizing other people's spaces. I definitely thought about it, but again, it just never seemed the pull was enough. I definitely thought about it. I thought like, what kind of studio would I want? Right now I'm moving more towards workshops. I created something called Sweat and Surrender. It's a 2-hour workshop where the first hour is a physical yoga flow where you're picking up the heat, you're creating a lot of sweat. It's like upbeat music. And then we switch to a candlelight yin practice, which is a slower practice, deeper stretching, and more focused on meditation. So that's more where I'm leaning to bring that workshop to other people, to companies, and in that kind of space. And I think especially now with COVID and everything, it's like you see that you can bring that virtually. I'm doing one in a couple weeks, a virtual workshop, which I'm excited about. But also it might be more like pop-ups is where I see things like that happening. I get to bring it to you, um,
Right.
kind of thing rather than brick and mortar.
I'm always intrigued of thinking of this, like the world on the other end is going to be just such an interesting place, because like what is going to like what's going to stay, like that's already kind of in place now, like things that we've established to be like normal commonplace type things, like what things are going to stay, which things are going to go, what has staying power and longevity and what doesn't. Do you think that you're going to always incorporate some sort of a virtual aspect of yoga whenever like it can just be in person, or do you think that that's just going to be something that you'd rather not deal with?
That's a great question. And I'm thinking about it, because one of the things, I think this was in our pre-show talk, but one of the great things has been getting to see people, in different cities and having it virtually. I know people are craving that in-person practice and class. So I mean, to answer right now, I think I'd like a mixture of both. I think there's something to be said about people that realize now, hey, I like that I can pop in this room for a second, turn on my computer, but do something that's a little more personal because I know Sarah and I know her class. So it's not just like a recording or something of someone they don't know. But there is something to being in person with people and getting to see them. And like I teach three siblings yoga every other Saturday. We do a socially distanced yoga. And, there's a lot coming out right now with kids dealing with school on Zoom and missing their friends and missing that community. And I'm hearing it from them. I'm seeing them and they're like, hating it. They're hating certain parts where they're like, man, I don't get to see my friends, or the internet cuts out, so I'm missing lessons. So I do hear it on the other end that, at least seeing me is one thing they get to be in person with again. And we catch up and, there is a different vibe. There'd be a different vibe if you and I were in the same room right now. So that was a long-winded answer too. I think both. I'd like to find a nice balance between being able to offer for people that have found comfort in this and also being back in person and being safe.
I love a good long-winded answer. Like there's nothing better to me than like a nice thoughtful answer about something. There's something like I'm sure everybody has had this conversation where it's just pulling teeth. Like you ask a question, you think like it's like, all right, this has something that they could like give me a nice meaty answer, and they're like, no, or like it's like give like the one sentence answer, and you're like,
I don't think I've ever been that person. No. Yes.
yeah, like anything else,
Yeah.
like you got care to have.
Cool.
Do you have any depth to you? Like what's going on here? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
a nice thoughtful answer is always something I'm way more interested in. And I probably talk this is just kind of like the way I am in general. And it might drive people crazy that like they probably want a shorter answer every now and then. And I'm like, let me take you on a journey real quick, and then I'll give you your answer.
I also wrote a song about it. Let
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that, I guess that brings us up to, relatively current with your yoga. So what becomes that moment that you are starting to take painting seriously? What are the things that go in motion that all of a sudden puts painting on the map?
Dude, painting, I feel like it found me. Like, I'm just gonna say that. I know that might sound like airy fairy, whatever, but like I was going through a hard time. Just keeping it real. I was going through heartbreak, wasn't just something hard that I was going through, that I had always liked painting. Really, I always have been amazed by artists. Like, I remember sitting next to this girl on the bus, and she always was sketching. And I think I always kind of judged my talent, because I remember this chick and just being like, wow, she is so good. Like, why would I even try? My brother and sister, they're really good at painting, and sketching. And I feel like I always had paints around and would always kind of mess around with them. I'd give them as gifts sometimes. And looking back now, like, if I would have, I have very supportive parents. I am grateful for parents that are just like, you're interested in this? Like, let's go, let's see. So for me, I feel like I put myself down for the art stuff. If I would have wanted to go to school for painting, they would have been like, explore that, go for it. Um, so, and I share that just because, for anyone listening, like, if you've been part of that, or you've put yourself down, okay, yeah, my life could have gone that way, and maybe I would have went to a fine art school and done it that way, but I didn't. So I found it in a time where I was going through this hard time, really depressed, and I just started painting. I saw, on Spotify, just some album art that looked really cool, and I was like, I just want to do my version of that. So I did it. And one night when I was like telling my friend, all about my sadness, I shared with him this art, and he was like, dude, you should post that. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I would rather eat my own hands than like
Yeah.
put that out there. I'm not doing that. And so then I kept painting a little bit, and he sketches. And so we were sharing, and he was like, just post it. So I started like posting, but not putting my name on it. It's like on my yoga page, I'm just kind of like starting to slowly share art, and people are like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? Um, but so now, like, it came out of that time, but now I also just paint because I love it. And even if I wasn't selling it, like, these walls will be filled. I'm doing it. It has taken over.
Yeah.
I still love yoga. It's still such a piece of me, but I am absolutely looking to just see what I can do with this now, because such cool opportunities have come from it. And I don't know if you've had this in your life where you're like maybe fighting something, or you're going one way, and then just this other avenue opens up, and there's just been so many cool things that I did. Posting about having an art show, I was like, am I in a dream? What is happening? And I want to chase that, I'm like, oh my gosh. And total, like, what do they call it, like imposter syndrome, hardcore. I'd be like, somebody's gonna find me out, and the
Right.
voiceover is gonna come in, and they're gonna be like, you're not an artist. But my journey has been, teaching myself, playing around with it, finding new. My style has already changed so much from the beginning, where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that this is fun and I want to explore it. So I think, like, it started from that, and now I'm like, okay, let's put in the time, let's practice these sketches, let's go to art shows, learn from other artists, see what inspires me. So there are other ways, if you feel like you didn't get to go to school, but we're in such a great time where you can teach yourself and put it out there, on social media. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I think
I
that's
don't get
awesome.
excited about art.
I know. I love it. It's kind of funny that that, you know, we connected because I
I
have
think I'm
this.
losing you.
We here? You there? Uh-oh. Wait, I see you. You see me?
Yeah, I
There
see
we go.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've been having like a little bit of
Yeah.
weird off and on bad connection, but it's been fine. Your audio has been completely fine the entire time, so I've been able to just like go with that. But yeah,
Yeah.
the way that I found you is kind of funny, and I talked about this before, that I'm very active in making the social media algorithm feed me like exactly what I want. Like I don't want to react to it. I want it to react to me. And a lot
Mhm.
of that is like, give me nature stuff, give me art, give me that. Like I want these things because I just want
Yeah.
to be, I don't want, like the other side of the coin is, you know, I also run ads on social media. Like I run Facebook ads and Instagram ads and stuff like that for other companies on social media. And like once you see how the machine works under the hood, you understand why people are only getting shit that makes them angry,
Yeah.
because it's just what makes you engaged, right? So I would much rather be engaged with things that inspire me than what pisses me off.
You don't want to just be enraged every time you're scrolling through. I don't understand.
Yeah, just like complete, like just pissed off, like um
Yeah.
yeah, no, I can't deal with that. And I see and hear things from other people about like every time they get on social media they just feel like they're about to go to war, and I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? But that's how I found you. Like I think it gave me like the art mixed with this Pittsburgh connection, and then you kind of came across as like a suggestion. I was like, well, I'm obviously adding her, like so that's kind of like where you come into the whole mix of things. But
I'm
yeah,
glad mine wasn't giving you rage.
yeah, yeah, this girl is definitely going to piss me off. I'm going to add her.
How dare you donate for kids?
But yeah, that's what I do with my social feeds. And like, if people saw, like, if you follow me on Instagram, the things that I post in my stories are so strange. Um, it's just like, it's sci-fi, it's art, it's
Yes.
like goofy nature shit. I love like the oddities of nature. All this stuff I just think is very interesting. And also like, I love anything that underwater, like oceans, sharks, beaches, travel.
I have been hardcore through COVID, like obsessed with ocean documentaries. I don't know what's happened, but I'm like anything on Netflix, anything on Hulu that I can find that's like scuba diving, underwater, saving coral reefs. I've been like zoomed in.
Did you
But
watch?
to what you were saying, just about what you post and what you share, like think about that. Like when you're posting something, what is this going to do to somebody's day? And I just try and like, whether it's silly or an inspirational quote, I'm like, I hope putting this out there, it can just like, you never know what people need to see or hear. And there is a lot of craziness out there. So I'm like, if it can just be a little light, like I'm going to share it and put it out there.
Yeah, I think I'm a lot more lighter and airy on Instagram than am on Facebook. You're gonna find like the snarky, like I hate this style of news person on Facebook a little bit more. I mean, I try not to be that all the time, but you know, I
When I
have
need
my
that in my life, I'll know where to go.
yeah, when I'm fed up with the narrative that's being spun, and I'm just like, I cannot believe this is what we're focusing on, like this is the conversation right now, that's probably when it comes out of me the most.
Yeah.
But uh largely, yeah, it's I my Instagram is so strange, but I do find myself on Instagram like scrolling a lot, and I know people say that anyways about like how social media is addicting, but like I literally catered it to be addicting so that it would be inspirational, so that I would be seeing
Yeah.
things that like I'm very interested in. And it's not like this content is like kind of I guess like capturing me. Like I kind of want to be captured by it. Like that's going to help me somewhere else. You know, it's going to give me an idea somewhere else.
That's awesome. I think that's such a great point because, I think I don't know if you watched, was it Social Dilemma? Is that what came out?
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, to what they're sharing, but also to your point, like my art page, my art Instagram page, I'm liking other artists. I'm liking things that inspire me. So, like you're saying, when I go on, or if I'm having a day where I'm like, what do I want to be painting? What's my vibe? I know I can go on there and be like, oh, damn, like, look at what this artist is doing. That's so cool. Or like finding inspiration in that. So, like, yeah, if you're clicking on crazy stuff, like, that's what's going to be popping up for you, but you can cater it to, and I think it's, yes, if you're on it all the time, it's gonna, take over. It's like too much of anything. It's how you use it. But I think that's a great point that you can be putting things in front of you that help you or inspire you.
Yeah. And so you were, it's funny that we're kind of on this because I wasn't sure how I would circle into it, but I was very curious, like how you're engaging with your audience now, like as an artist, even as like a yoga instructor. Like, are you using anything? Are you like using more any newer technology? Like, are you on TikTok? Have you dabbled in Clubhouse yet? Like, how do you engage with like your audience?
Yeah, so I haven't done any of those. I've never done TikTok. I'm like a very old 32-year-old. I'm like, oh, TikTok, huh? I don't. I'm not like knocking it. I just haven't. I guess I'm lucky that I had a good yoga base. I try to see what works for people. Some of my clients are older, so I honestly, if people have reached out and they're like, this has been really intimidating for me because they weren't used to Zoom or things like that, I text them my schedule. I reach out to them on like a Facebook message. I'm like, hey, in case you're missing the stories and things, like here it is. But sometimes I try to do videos. I think like if that helps people, and I post that on Instagram or Facebook. But that's really been what I've been doing. Texting people that I know are curious about it. Instagram, Facebook. I haven't done TikTok. Have you been on Clubhouse? I've heard about it. I haven't done it.
I've played with it, but I'm also what I guess iPhone users would call the green bubble. I'm an Android user, so Clubhouse
Awesome,
is,
really nice talking to you.
God, Android shaming. It's despicable. I'm canceling all of you people. Um, God, yeah, it's like it's Android bigotry. God Almighty.
Yeah.
Um, no,
I didn't realize it until my friend was like, "Oh, our friend that has an Android hates when we heart or like the message. He hates it." And I was like, "Oh, is this a thing that?" Okay, got it.
because it says what you did. Like instead of me seeing the heart or a laugh emoji or whatever, it says Sarah loves and then the text that you liked or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very funny. Yeah, I mean, and it's whatever, but yeah, it's a little
Laura had
weird.
no response, so all she did was heart your message.
Yeah. Yeah, the way that the two play with each other is kind of strange. Although I'm going to get into this a little bit because I've said this before. Like I'm in tech, my day
Mhm.
job is like I work for a streaming company, and I said this, I even wrote a blog about it I think years ago. If Apple would have just opened up iMessage so that everybody could use it, they would own the messaging space. They would literally own it because
Yeah,
50% of people are on it already if they're just Apple users. And then if Android users could use it just for ease of use for communicating with Apple people, we would just use it. And it
yeah,
drives me crazy that they never opened it up to be like an everyone app. But even though like I'm a Apple stockholder as well, like they're just a money printing machine. So it's not like they don't need to take my friggin' advice. but they have made some missteps in the
It's out there.
past. What's that?
It's out there, you
Yeah.
know?
They have made some missteps, like the what is it, the AirPod or whatever, like their version of like the Amazon Alexa. I can't. She'll freak out if I say
She'll
her
turn
name.
on.
She's
Yeah.
always listening. God damn it, she heard.
That
So
is a little, see, that stuff freaks me out. I'm like, it's all on, it's all listening. We're
now it's in
never
the other
alone.
room too. I thought I said it light enough that she wouldn't have heard, but I don't know if that came through or not. That'll be funny to hear in the audio if it picked it
Yeah.
up.
I
Um,
couldn't hear it, so I think you're good.
but yeah, they had like their own version of that, and they were just so late to the game, and it was I don't even know if they ever released it, but
Yeah.
uh, I just always thought that if Apple would have released iMessage into the world as an app that everybody could have, they would own the messaging space hands down. It wouldn't even be an issue. Like, I don't think WhatsApp would have been able to like get a foothold on things. I don't think
Right.
this new one, Signal, would be able to get a foothold on things because iMessage in and of itself is pretty secure. Just the way that Apple's like new battle
You
against
could just
social
be
media.
liking and exclaiming messages away, you thumbs up.
I'm not an emoji user though. Like I use like the OG ones, like and
Okay.
I type them out too. Like it's either that or nothing. I keep saying that hieroglyphics had their chance. Turns out not a great method.
All right, all right. I'm a little obsessed with mine. I like the geek and glasses one. That's one I send a lot.
I do like some people are actually really good with it and are really funny. But I gotta admit that's few and far in between. Most of the time, people just load me up with emojis, and I'm like, we're gonna have a problem here. Like I just shut off. I just can't. I'm like, well, this conversation is over. Uh,
Yeah.
so we haven't gotten into this, but if
Mhm.
people didn't know by now or haven't realized that you're good at this, you've had a podcast before.
Yes, I
And I
have.
feel like that somehow got glossed over in this whole professional journey. So uh, let's get
Yeah.
into that because I don't know. It might make sense that I might be interested in you being a podcaster, considering what we're doing right now.
Yes, yes. No, I mean, it was a really cool journey. It was kind of an experiment to start. A friend of mine that I knew through yoga, we wanted a project. We didn't know at first if it was going to be a short, a video. We wanted to interview people just on their different opinions on similar topics. So, we were going to kind of start with love was one of our main focus topics in the beginning. And we were like, well, how do we, do it? Do we want people from different countries, different ages? And um, just the four women that it ended up becoming a podcast was, it just came together. It was kind of crazy. Me and this girl, Erin, started, and then I met her friend at the post office. She commented on my braids. That evening, I ran into her at a coffee shop. I was like, I saw you earlier today. She's like, oh, yeah, your hair was cute. I said something. She was with her family. I met her parents from out of town. So weird. She was the woman my friend wanted me to meet to join our podcast. And we met randomly. So then when we connected, we were like, oh my God, I already met you just out in life. It was so bizarre. And then one of my other closest friends, this woman who Yogi has traveled, but is also from New Jersey. I love her vibe. So there was four of us. And I don't like you doing your show and how you have your schedule and flow. I don't know if you can imagine trying to do it within three other people.
Oh
Um,
God. Yeah, scheduling is already a nightmare with just one trying to get one other person. Or just
yeah.
me trying to get my life in order. Christ, the fact that I have to be organized these days
When
is
am I
crazy.
available?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really cool. It was called X Shared. We still have episodes up on Spotify. Um, and it was a really great experience. I mean, we had just real conversations. We did different experiments. Like, we would have a gratitude practice for a month, and then we'd come back together and kind of talk about our experience with that, how we felt about it. We went through our life kind of looking, knowing that that month we were looking for silver linings in our life. So then the episode would be about silver linings. And I like that we all had different personalities. So sometimes we come in and be like, it was so great, I loved it. And somebody would come in and be like, I didn't find any, or I had a really hard time with this, or I felt resistance around it. So I really tried to also think about what people are really going through. So it wasn't just like, how do I want to say this? Finding the balance between like being positive and wanting to put that light out there, but then also realizing like, hey, people are going through losing a job, or their kid just got diagnosed with cancer. So how do you have a gratitude practice and deal with some real life stuff? So we really tried to cross those barriers and combine the two in conversation. Um, so yeah, it was a great experience. One of our co-hosts moved early on in the process. So not only were we dealing with schedules, but also not being in the same room. And now, COVID, here we are doing this, different time zones and things. But it was a challenge in the beginning. But I feel like we really respected each other. I think I learned how to work with other people and respect just different opinions in a work environment. Try not to put others down in the process, with different ideas coming in. Um, but yeah, it was a really cool experience. I'm glad I did it. That being said, it was also at the height of my cyst on my vocal cords. So, dude, I go back and I hear episodes, and I was trying to teach 5 classes a day, come back, have this energy, be live, on this podcast, and I hear it in my voice, and I'm like, man, I didn't know, but it was pretty rough.
Right. Well, I mean, it's wild because, like, you're telling me about you having this cyst, and I'm like, I just brought you onto a thing where we're just supposed to aimlessly talk for a while. Uh, but so you guys basically kind of just had like a round table. Did you do any guests or anything like that?
Yeah, so we had talked about that, and we had also talked about having this idea of like breakout episodes, or maybe there'd be two of us interviewing someone else. So it was interesting. There aren't a lot of podcasts out there with 4 hosts,
Right.
and we just thought like having guests, that's a lot of voices, that's a lot of space. So we never got to that point. It was kind of interesting just being able, our angle and our goal was more like us having these experiments and different things that then became the topic. So it was more of, like you said, a roundtable of us sharing and coming at it from our own experiences.
Was it just an audio format? Did you guys do any video or anything like that?
Yeah, it was just audio.
Yeah, there's a part of me that, like, I kind of was leaning like audio would be just, it would be easier if I only did audio. It would just be so much easier. But like, truly as a podcast consumer, I basically live in this office. Like, I do my work here,
It's
but
a
then
great
like
space.
it's
You look good. You look good in your setup.
thank you. Well, the funny part, and we'll circle back. Um, I had this built like long ago. This is my vocal recording booth. Like, I do music in here. I've had this office kind of all set up, and the idea was like, this is where I'm going to get my work done. But back in the long ago, whenever I would actually have to go to an office, I would come home, and like the last thing that I wanted to do was sit in another office. I'd
Hmm.
been in an office environment. I didn't want to come and sit here. I would like grab my laptop, just take it over to the couch, and I'd do, my startup work over there. And that was kind of like how I went about, just navigating doing 2 jobs at once. And then the lockdown happened, and all of a
Mm.
sudden, I had this office that I had built and like thoughtfully built. Like I have 2 workstations. I have the one that I'm on, and then I have this one behind me that I can like just be juggling so many other things. And I actually have a third one that I don't have set up that I can if I need to. So I like have like a full command center here. Was totally ready to just bring it all home. Like I'm built to work at home. Like I have a better setup at home than
Yeah.
I do in my office, but like it's a great
Like, COVID, let's go.
right.
I'm ready.
But it put it all to the test. It was like my proof of concept, right? I had to like once COVID hit and I had to go home, then I was here and I just had to see whether or not this worked out well. And it turned out like I felt very creative here. Like even after the workday was over, I never really wanted to leave here. Like this was like I stay in this area most of the day. I'll probably be here, I don't know, anywhere from 12 hours, 12 to 15 hours a day. Like I've spent entire days here just doing work or whatever. But like I consume podcasts via video. I watch them on YouTube for the most part. And for me to have a podcast, it seems, I guess if we're speaking to authenticity, it would seem inauthentic to me to have my own podcast that isn't in the way that I like to consume it the most.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
I do
What
a
about like,
video.
do you ever listen, you said you do more audiobooks and stuff like that. Do you find like, do you listen more when you're on the go, or is it something you'd rather, like you're saying you watch a video, do you sit down to like chill and unwind and watch them?
I mean, the funny part is like, I don't even really watch them that much, but it's like when I want to get the glance, like I just glance over and see what what their facial expressions are, you get more context with a visual than you do with just the audio. And like, I do listen to some audio because, a lot of these people have their podcasts monetized, and like the video version, you have to pay for. Free version is on like Spotify or something for free, whatever. So which is fine. But yeah, I just feel like there's in general, if I have something that can feed all the senses, then I can understand exactly the context of what's going on in that conversation. So and just sometimes
That's
like
funny. I feel like I rarely watch as I'm on here. I'm like, I think I listen more, just like as you were explaining. I'm like, what do I do? Because I think I listen, I'm on the go, or like especially with COVID, LA has been really shut down. So one of the ways I was able to get out of my house, because I paint from here and I teach from here, was just going on walks around my neighborhood. I can keep my mask on. And so I think that really got me into more listening to podcasts. So I guess it depends what I'm doing, because like you said, I like seeing people's energy. So I'm gonna claim that I like both. That I
yeah
do.
yeah I feel like anytime I have the option, I watch, and then either I'm not in a position to watch, or there isn't an opportunity to watch, so I'll listen. It's not like I write them off if I can't watch it. Like, a video, fuck off. Like,
I'm out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but did you do any of the editing and anything like that? Like, were you a part of like the recording, the post processing? Like, this is a lot. Like, to do a podcast,
For
like it's
anyone
one.
listening, if you're like, I'm just gonna do a podcast, it is a lot. This man has put in some time to this. It is. I did not. Luckily, one of our co-hosts is an amazing editor, and that was one of the things. Like, it's a lot, and so I think we felt like, man, none of us, the other hosts, were editors, and there's a lot of time, because we had somebody in a different city, just like getting her audio correct and clean with different mics and stuff. It did take some time. So I got to just pop on and say my piece, and then kind of dip out, which didn't feel great. I wish I knew more on that side of things, but it does take a lot of time. And we always had such a good time. And because three of us were in person, we'd end up like joking around, whether we were like, sipping wine, having snacks, kind of hanging. So we tried to keep it tight as we moved forward, because we realized like we want her to have to edit the smallest amount
Right.
moving forward. So yeah.
And like for me, like a lot of the reason why I do this podcast, and even earlier on we were just doing the interview series, I try not to edit. I try not to like cut any of the conversation out. Just let it be raw. Like let the mistakes come as they need to. Like if we say something wild and got to pull it out, like we'll talk about it after, and we'll pull it. We'll agree to pull it out.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I just try to let it roll. And I think there's something, I've actually enjoyed it with other podcasts that I've seen, like where this is legitimately a thing where like we're all dealing with this situation, like an internet connection might be bad, or like your microphone might not be working, or like for whatever reason I can't get my freaking camera to turn on, like all these things. Like this is like the even playing field of
Mhm.
COVID right now, is like the virtual space that we have to like navigate through.
The cat face, stuck on the screen, the frozen,
Right.
the person talking forever and they've been muted. But don't you find too, though, just in entertainment and in listening, I feel like we've moved closer towards appreciating those moments where something might be a little messy, because it just makes it human. And you're like, oh, other
Right.
people mess up or appreciate the silly. Not everything's as polished as maybe, before in entertainment or interviews or anything. It's like, I think we enjoy seeing that a little bit.
Yeah, like we're clearly not in a production studio,
Yeah.
like, but it's funny that you said like, or someone's been like, someone was talking, but they've been muted the whole time. I think I really want to make a shirt that says you're on mute.
Somebody said a teacher made a shirt that was like, honey, you're muted, because she said it so many times.
I just think that that's like the you're on mute is
Mhm.
like the phrase of COVID.
Okay. We should. I bet you should make that happen. A lot of people would buy that. I say that in yoga all the time, because people just get, and they look so excited, and I'm like, wait, we can't hear you. We don't
uh,
got it. I don't know.
yeah, well, that's at least with you guys, even though you weren't doing any of the editing or anything, that like the production side of things, it would be great to have four people helping spread the word of a podcast, like publicizing it and promoting it on their social networks and stuff like that, instead of like just wanting a business page. But so at least there's a benefit still. Like it's not like because you're not doing anything technical with it. The most I would say the most valuable, I think the production, it being able to be made into a final product is probably the most valuable thing. But the next most valuable thing is being able to promote it. So I still think that you don't have to feel bad about not doing any of the technical stuff. You were a part of a very, very important process.
Yeah, and we did talk about that, and we did take turns, when we had our Instagram and the posts. And I think it was just a really great experience too, because you get excited about something and you're working on it, and then we would go to like, we're getting close, it's edited, we're getting ready to post it, and I'm like, man, like, what did I say? Just like other people are going to be hearing this and listening. I think it was a very interesting moment for me to be like, right, so once we post it, it's out there, like just being mindful of your words, and really thinking about who do you want to be and what do you want to be saying, and that at the end of the day you can have the best intentions and people are listening or coming at it with their own stuff. So I think just being true to yourself and putting out there, you know being as genuine as you can, and just being truthful with what you're saying, and people will take it how they will.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think, like, if I had an act that I was supposed to put on for, I mean, we're at this about an hour and a half or so now, because we talked a long time before we even got started. But I don't think that I would have been able to maintain it. Like, I would have broken down into just eventually being me, because it's just easier. That's just, I'm way, I don't know. I don't think that I could wear another face for a long form podcast and then not eventually slip into being exactly who I am, which I think is why long form podcasts are so kind of important and also useful, because I think eventually, if somebody's bullshitting, it comes through. Eventually it gets exposed.
And you know what's cool having, for women on this podcast, people listening, you might like how you might have a friend tell you the same advice over and over, and then somebody else tells it to you a different way, and you're like, oh, yes. Like sometimes people might just connect more to one of us. So we did have that a little bit where people are like, wow, I really liked, the way Aaron said this. So I really connected with Susan the way it was expressed. So I think that was something, even though four people, had its different things going on there, like people got to hear different voices and connected to different personalities.
Yeah, that's really cool. How long did the whole podcast last? Like, when did you start it, and when did you guys call it quits?
That's a great, yeah, I'm really great with details. I think over a year was the process. Over a year, gosh, they would know. And it's probably like 2 years. And I'm like, I don't know, it felt like nothing. I think we had about 8 episodes out, 8 or 9. And it just, we honored the process. It was so fun. We had such a great time, but I think we started realizing like scheduling and just how it was going about. We all had other things happening in our lives that were just like, let's like appreciate what we had and end it here. So I still like, I'll go back and check out some episodes sometimes and just laugh, because I'm like, man, that was such a cool process, and getting to talk about how, what episode we wanted to come up with and different things we tried. It was a cool experience, so glad I did it.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I've been loving doing this, and honestly, like, yeah, I said before, I don't know if I actually said this on the podcast or if it was in our pre-conversation, but like, I was having such like a creative rut, and I didn't feel on at all. So like, I hadn't been recording any episodes, but like, it feels good to be back doing this. I don't know if maybe if I would have just forced myself into having a conversation with somebody, if that would have broken through, or if I would have just wasted their time. I would have felt horrible if the latter took place. But it's a lot of fun to sit down and kind of just like exercise perspectives, like
Yeah.
hear a story, see other people, hear other people give their experiences, and yeah, give their perspective on like what those experiences, like what they process like to them.
Yeah. Well, and I think at least what I love and take from podcasts is you get to hear of other people's stories, their backgrounds, and just we've been in COVID, we've been in our houses a lot. There have been times where I felt really connected to people, and there are times I feel kind of lonely. And it's just, I really like hearing other people's stories and journeys, connecting from that. There was a really great interview. I think it was Oprah interviewing Kevin Hart, and hearing that dude's journey and like what he went through with stand up, like I just like left that morning like, okay. And that gave me like a little lift in my art, in my journey. Cause I was like, damn, like what he went through and just pushing through and seeing where he's at now. So yeah, I think you got a good thing going. How long have you been doing your podcasts?
Uh, so the shutdown happened in March, and everybody kind of started chilling out on their social media at that point, like I was saying in our pre-conversation. And I was like, this is a really bad idea. People need to be communicating more. So then that's when I had the idea of doing the interview series. So I think we kind of massaged the idea for maybe a week or two. And then I think maybe April, it launched last April. So I was doing small interviews, and then kind of took some time when like when the protests and everything like that really were breaking out. I was like, we don't need to be muddying up the social feeds. Like, let whatever communication needs to be out about what's going on right now, like let that be the communication. Took some time off, and then kind of came back when that basically everybody seemed to have a grasp of what was going on, and what the motions were, what people were going through with the motions. And it's basically been a steady thing ever since. I've been trying to put them out relatively weekly, but sometimes you can't get a guest. Sometimes I can't, I just don't feel like I have the brain for conversation.
Yeah.
But at one point we knew we needed to pivot how we were doing the interviews, because at first we were talking about like the stipulations of the shutdowns. Like, what are you dealing with? What are the restrictions? How is that affecting your business? And literally as we were recording one of the interviews, as I like shut it down and I'm getting the file ready and everything like that, I pull up Facebook or something and I see a post that's like from 20 minutes ago saying that the restrictions had changed. So everything that we had just talked about was largely not wasn't relevant anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
it was relevant for talking about what they were dealing with in the past, but not for like what they were doing, how that's affecting them moving forward. And I was like, we can't keep doing this. And I can't keep up with this anymore. It's
Yeah.
changing too quickly. So
Isn't that crazy that like I remember because I was pretty like I was staying in, I wasn't going out a lot, I was being like really hardcore. And then when I started hearing like, some things were opening up, I went out, I went to the art store, I was getting supplies. And I remember being like, damn, have people been out like this whole time? And I'm like the
yeah.
only one that's been. It just felt like I feel like people have been doing this and I haven't. And I just wonder how many other people like felt the same, like, wait a second, have I been like the only one?
Right. I was like, I thought I was doing the thing
I
that
thought we were
everybody
all
else
supposed
was
to
doing.
be, were
Yeah.
you guys out here the whole time?
Yeah, no, it's been a weird time. And I do remember I was talking to somebody right when like Allegheny County went green, like, so like we got to like open up and people could go out and everything like that. And just after, I mean, how long it had taken us months to do it. I think it was in June we went green. And I remember saying something like, I really wish they didn't call this green. And someone was like, why? I was like, because green means go. I was like, we're like, if we were like in red, went on like full lockdown, and then like whenever they lighten things up, I was like, it probably should have been orange next.
Yeah.
And like now we should be in yellow. Now we
Yeah.
should be like in slow, like go slow. You can be moving, but
Yeah.
go slow. And then when like we're done, it can be green. That can be green. And then everybody can be like, let's go. But yeah, I do, because I went out to eat one day, and I haven't really been going out much. It actually kind of is a soul suck anyways. Like, it really, to sit down in a
Are you
place.
guys do you still have to have masks when you go out?
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
everybody wears masks, and like it's all social distance. And I don't even know, like there's like a certain percentage of the place can only be filled, like 25% or 50 or something like that. But like I go to bars and restaurants and stuff like that for the environment, for the people, for the energy. And when you go and it's completely empty and there's no vibe, there's no nothing, like back in the day, that was a reason to leave. You know, that
Yeah.
was a reason not to stay. That's not a reason to be like, let's go sit down and, you know, this is our spot. Like that was the reason we left. So like for me, it's not that like I wouldn't go out or you know, like that I'm afraid of going out or anything like that, but the the whole environment, the feel, the vibe that I'm looking for, like kind of the escape that I'm looking for leaving my house isn't being provided by these places anymore because the lack of people, the lack of energy kind of takes away from the like the personality that that place was able to provide. And so yeah, I've just been kind of kicking it. Like takeout is fine. Like I'll eat your food. I just can't stay here. Like it's almost more depressing being here than it is to just eat this at home.
Yeah. I do think too, like at least I live in a pretty just like cute little neighborhood. There's a lot of small businesses right where I live is my point there. Um I feel like there's been a little more sense of community around it. Like when I ordered takeout from this place on the corner, like you're talking to the owner and they're like, "Thank you so much for coming in." And I'm like, "Yeah, I live down the street." And they're like, "Well, come in more." You know, it's like you know that by ordering just dinner from this place that it means so much to them and that it's helping them. And that was never, you know, not as much. Maybe it was there, but now I'm like, you know what? If I order out, let me pay attention to where I'm going to because there is the spot right across the street, or there is this place that I know like just opened up right before COVID. So like that your meal you order does matter. I think that showed up a little bit. I think it's so weird too how like just wearing a mask won't be weird anymore. Like even when we do open up and you don't have to wear them anymore, if somebody's choosing to, it's not going to be like what's going on there. I feel like we'll just be like, well, yeah, maybe they're still doing the thing. They still want the mask. I don't know. Do you think about that? Just how that's changed, what's normal, what compared to what might be weird in the past?
Yeah, I do. And you know, I've actually thought about that exact thing like in if you saw somebody and I think largely they'll actually be met with a little bit of criticism like not like harsh, but they'll be like people will be like, "Why are you still wearing masks? Like we're
Yeah.
done." But on the other side of it though, I do think there's something to the idea of like, all right, we've kind of gotten into this place where it's not so okay anymore to get each other sick. Where like we would always go places with colds or like, you
Yeah.
know, just getting over a flu or not knowing that we were like on the verge of having, but we would definitely be having some sort of a symptom and we're like, screw it, we're going out anyways.
I'm just sick.
Yeah, it's whatever. But like, yeah, so I've gone an entire year without a cold and I'm going, oh, that was nice. I like that. Yeah, that's I could
Yeah.
probably go for a couple more years without a cold. That would be great.
Mhm.
Um, so I wonder if like if you do go out and you know that you're feeling like you have like small cold symptoms or something like that, if people wear masks just to be like, I'm actually doing this to not breathe this all over you.
Mhm.
Like, I'm just like, me and my friend are, they've agreed that they don't mind and we're whatever. But like, I'm just not going to walk around spewing this stuff all over. So you're
Yeah.
probably not going to randomly pick up somebody else's cold as easy, maybe, who knows? But or if it's just making you feel better, perhaps. I don't know, but the whole it does make you. I think a lot of people said this early on, like it's kind of stereotypical to bring up like Asian people in airports, but like it seemed like they had this. They were way ahead of us on this
They
idea.
wore masks.
Yeah,
They wore
it
masks.
just was a part of the culture, and I think like most people would crack jokes at it like going like what is going on there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Meanwhile, they're like suckers. You didn't know.
well, that too, but like every time I go on a flight, like I have all of this vitamin C stuff, blah blah blah. Like there are very few flights where like the next day I don't feel like garbage. You know,
Yeah.
like I catch stuff on flights all the time or in airports or wherever. There's so many people, so many things that you could easily catch something. And so to have for somebody to be ahead of the curve on not getting sick, like I don't know. It's funny now, like ironically funny now. They're like, "Oh,
Mm.
I get it. I get it. Now that the world is completely shut down and it's total torture, I understand."
Right, what it takes us. I think too, I'm so curious, just like the day that they're gonna be like, okay, go ahead, no masks, like just what it's gonna feel like. I went for a run the other day in the morning and I was like, oh man, like the fresh air on my face. And then I was like, oh my God, the fresh air on my face. Like I forgot my mask. Like I had to run back inside and get it. Because now it's just like, oh my God, like this is what we do. You go outside, you have it on. I mean, some people haven't and they're not doing that. But just like what it will be like the day they're like, all right, you guys, go ahead, we're free. Like, just what that's gonna feel like.
Yeah, life after this will be interesting. Like I know there's going to be a lot of things we're going to need to reckon with because a lot of people have chosen to be a certain way during this that has maybe not been the most flattering thing to a lot of the people around them, maybe whether it's their friends or their family or even co-workers or whatever. And you kind of are supposed to give them like you're supposed to give them like a lot of rope, right? You know, just kind of like, all right, whatever, like these are crazy times, deal with it however you need to get through it. But then there is gonna kind of need to be a reckoning at the other side. So
Mm.
like if you've not necessarily been the nicest person or you've not necessarily been the most thoughtful person or like you've been holier than thou or harshly criticizing people or whatever, like there's gonna be another side to this,
Mm.
and they're gonna have to come to terms with how they conducted themselves during it.
Right.
I also find that very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. But and I think to that too, it's like what's going on there? What's going on underneath of that? You know, why do people react that? Why have some come out so harsh and are reacting on this side? Like just the human response to that. I'm always very curious, like, all right, where's that coming from? Like, what's going on there that you're posting this way or behaving this way? And kind of like what we were talking about earlier, how it's like this side or this side. It's like, okay, well, what's just the information around this that's been put out there, and why did you choose this side compared to that? Little things like to me, I just feel like regardless of how you feel politically, like the choice to wear a mask, like it just seems like a human thing. Like, hey, right now we're just saying, can you do this? Can you just wear a mask right now? Because some things are going on that we're not sure about. So by doing that, you're just going to help us kind of lock things in a little bit. To me, it just seems like, okay, so can you, like, for a little bit, just
Right.
try this thing?
Yeah, like I and it's funny, like I can sit here and listen to all the arguments on all sides of it and go like there's probably a shred of validity to all of these arguments or whatever. Like for me, I just don't like it's not that big of like a bother to me. You know, like
Yeah.
what? You know, like throw a mask on. Like whatever, dude. Like I also need to wear a shirt when I go into like a store. Like it's not that big of a thing. You know,
Yeah.
like I just don't like no shoes, no shirt, no service. Like
Mhm.
okay, add mask. You know, like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's not it just doesn't it it was never an issue that was it just wasn't big enough for me to like put a lot of effort into it. No, like do I want to? No.
Yeah.
But like I also don't want to get sick. Also, even maybe even more than I don't want to get sick, I don't want to deal with the hassle of people bitching at me about not wearing a mask. So,
Yeah.
the path of least resistance to me is put on a stupid mask. Like It's just that easy to me. Like it's so silly. I just don't have time for that. Like I have a lot of things going on in my life, and that's not the battleground I'm going to like dig my heels in on. I just don't
Mm.
care. That all that type of stuff to me is
And
so
I
like
think too, like
minute.
people that feel like it's like, oh, the government is telling me to wear a mask and it's too much government involvement. It's like just, but look at what's happening right now. And, like if it ends up being like years and there's no more pandemic and like you still have to do these things, like then, look at that. But like right now, it's just like people are getting sick and people are dying and we're trying to get a hold on this thing. So yeah, maybe for a year, like you wear a mask when you're outside. To me too, it's more like I don't know, just knowing the people around me, like it would make them feel uncomfortable and unsafe if I didn't have one on. So I'm gonna wear one. Like if a friend was just like, hey, can you please wear a mask? And and I was like, no, like that just those interactions too. I think when it's personal, like it
Right.
just having certain friends that I'm like, that's falling down and it makes me uncomfortable. Like, so can you just like pull it up? Like, I don't understand what's happening here.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what's funny is like we're having this mass discussion. I don't even think that we've gone anywhere like inflammatory in the slightest, but like people would think that this is like kind of walking on a line right now, like that we're having this like
Sure.
discussion about masks or whatever. And like, but like this is our everyday existence. What we can't talk about the fact that we're wearing this, like
Yeah.
if I said like, hey, you have a nice shirt on, like that's also your everyday existence. Can we not discuss that? Like, or is it like, or do we immediately have to get into a free the nipple conversation? Like what,
Right.
like,
Well, and like you can listen to this and totally disagree. That's okay. But it's just like, this is how I feel about it. And we should be able to have this conversation.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. I forget, there's a great quote. It's like, if if it's if it's human, it's manageable. Wait, how does it go? It's something about like being mentionable and being manageable. It's like if it's human, it's mentionable. If it's mentionable, then it's manageable. I
Mm.
think I think that's what it's supposed to be. And it's kind of like a statement about free speech, but it's about like every topic or even every single word. Like if we can't have a discussion about it, then there's no way that we're ever going to have the best ideas rise to the top,
Exactly.
because if it's taboo to explore, then you're largely going to find that the people that have the best ideas about this concept, about this idea, about this whatever, aren't going to be able to, insert that into the conversation so that it can become the best idea.
Exactly. And like I'm sitting here having this opinion and then I have to sit back and look at like, okay, if somebody else was on and able to talk calmly and share their other side of it about not wearing a mask, like can I sit here and listen to that and hear what they have to say? And I think, that's where we need to be with things, being able to hear the other side and have the conversation. But I like that. I like your quote.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a rough one though. You'll if you're the type of person that's sitting back and like if someone there are certain slices of people that whenever they hear that you're open to listening to someone's complaint about not wearing masks, they're going to be like, "Then you're killing grandma." Like it's just like that real extreme side. And it is funny. Like it goes back to there is going to be there's going to be some very interesting repercussions for people for the way that they acted.
Mm.
And like I'm not going to sit here and say that like I am holier than thou in any way, like shape or form, but I feel like been very I've been very concentrated and focused on trying to be as absolutely reasonable and patient as I can during all of this, because I think if I can give anything to anybody, it's just a little bit of patience and some reason. So
Yeah.
like some rationale, like be rational, be reasonable, and be patient. Like I guess you could call that all, you could ball it up together and be like, that's empathy. But like, that's, I really think that like, that's the most that I can give and owe everybody in this whole thing, because like I'm no pro and I'm definitely not a scientist. I have no PhD in anything, bro science maybe. But like the whole, this whole thing is going to have, it's going to have consequences for how people conducted themselves.
Yeah.
And I will, it will be very interesting to see when that reckoning happens, how that manifests.
Yeah. Have you found in this, and I mean, kind of like just the year we had with all the politics, with the protests happening? I mean, do you feel like you had, and then into the masks, no masks, that there have been heated conversations within family and friends? Have you avoided that or worked your way through that at all?
Yeah, no, so my family is actually fairly political, in certain people, but I would, I would say the core of it has, our conversations definitely has a lot of political tones to it. My friends too, but my whole thing is, like I told you, like I don't consume the same information that other people
Right.
consume. It just, I know that as far as like traditional journalism is concerned, and like the code of journalism ethics and everything like that, like what we are reading in newspapers and what we're seeing on TV does not align. And I found people and outlets that are doing it well, or at least to the best of their ability, doing it much better than others. So my whole argument, not even my argument, it's more like my plea. Like I wish people understood the difference between like theatrics, symbolics, and actual policy. Like
Mic drop.
like that's the do all to end all for
Yeah.
me. I feel like we've been doing this thing for an entire year, and everybody is wrapped up in these symbolic gestures and these political theatrics, and no one is really paying attention to like people's actual commitment to policy or the execution of policy. And it does bother me a lot, and I try not to let that bubble up too much. But that's kind of something that you'll probably see that pop up on Facebook here and there. But I yeah, I wish that was something that people understood and recognized more. um but it's it's just not what's it's not readily available. That information is not readily available to people. And the way that media is structured, having it being like ad revenue based, is that it needs to just be sensationalized, which means they're gonna give you the most exciting version, or the version, not even the most exciting version, but the version that excites a certain group of people the most. And largely what does that is making them pissed off at another group of people. It's the Facebook algorithm if you let it happen.
Well, and again, yeah, because it has to be one side against the other. Like, oh, both sides couldn't, possibly have similar information or just be giving the information. It's entertainment.
Oh, it's totally entertainment. Like it's wild. It's sports. It's weird. It's very strange. If anybody is still listening at this point, there's an amazing book that's out there. It's called Hate Inc. And it's about everything that's happening like right now. Everything in our information sphere, in the way that that society is reacting to it and to each other because of it, is in this book. And it is incredible. It's by Matt Taibbi, if you know who he is. Incredible journalist. I think he's probably one of the top 10 on the planet as far as like being a journalist today.
Mhm.
but he's so good. And he's, I would say he's one of the last like real investigative journalists that are like out there. The way that they used to be, like the Walter Cronkites and stuff like that
Yeah.
that people used to have. Um,
Nice. I'll have to check that out. I haven't heard of that.
it's an amazing book. If I feel like if everybody read it, they would look around and go, "Oh shit, I recognize all this." Like, like
Yeah.
it is wild. And it's funny because I feel like everybody's saying the quiet part out loud now, and like we're still not seeing it. How is that like a thing? Um, but
Hopefully through what you're doing, through these podcasts, through these conversations, though, we see a shift. I'll
yeah,
put that out into the universe. And like I'm hoping, I hope, getting to hear other sides, hopefully being open to hearing these conversations that will get there.
well, so I feel like this is like a good way to like start segueing towards the end of this. Otherwise we're just going to keep going into our gripes with COVID and or how people have dealt with themselves during it. You had a podcast that talked about finding silver linings and whatnot. So like, what have your silver linings been in this? Obviously you started, a whole career as being an artist. I'm sure that's quite the silver lining. But I would say like, extraneous to that, like what else, what's your silver lining in COVID?
Yeah, that's actually, I did another episode with my friend's podcast in Pittsburgh, and we started talking about that because I'm definitely a person that lives that way, like I don't negate like the hardships or the hard things that happen, but when I am down, I just try to remember like, man, Sarah, remember the last time you were down and you didn't see the way out, and like here you are, So I always try and tap back to that place. I think the silver linings I've found, in this, we're recognizing my resilience and what I can tap into when I'm, I was in it at the one studio. I was like one of the top teachers. I had been there for a long time, and that just, was taken away. And I think we can put a lot of our identity into a job and into a place. So I think realizing my inner strength, and that I took a lot of time to slow down and to look at like, okay, what do I want my day to look like? What do I want to be doing? Who do I want to be surrounding myself with? Who's been checking in? Who's staying around? So realizing like who your core group is and who really cares about you has been a silver lining. Getting to slow down and get my own fitness and my own workouts in. When I was teaching 5 classes a day, I'm putting all of my energy out there, like my own physical well-being with my voice and my body went down. I'm feeling the strongest and the healthiest I have in a long time. I got to have my surgery. I think finding really the art has been crazy. I have a whole new business and new opportunities coming out of this. But I guess a lot of those things too come from the work that I did looking inward and looking at, how do I want to move forward out of this? Um, yeah, so I would take that. I mean, I'm like 57 days sober right now. I decided at the beginning of the year just to do a 30-day thing, and then my mom asked me to join her for 100 days. And I think what's been coming out of this is like, how do I want to be showing up in my life and what version of myself? And so I'm just exploring that. Just for me too, like when I talk about that stuff, I always like to say like, that's just my journey. I'm not, putting anybody else down or anything. I'm just exploring sobriety right now, and it's showed up in my fitness, my health, and my creativity, and being able to read more. So I definitely, I feel like from having my work taken away from me, I've definitely been able to find that silver lining in the good on the other side of what felt like a loss. And I did let myself feel it. I very much was like, let me deal with this right now, because if I don't, I might just like bottle that up. And there was definitely a little bit of time I'd have like ghost feelings of going back to the studio, that I worked at, and I was like, oh my God, that's gone. That space is gone. I'm never teaching there again. Like, it's closed.
Oh,
So dealing with it, facing it, but then being like, okay, because I think too, and I don't know if you feel this sometimes, like, I'm sure there are definitely parts of that life that I was like, yeah, this is what I want and this is how I want it to be. But then when you dig deeper, it's like, okay, but also how tired was I and how much was I looking like, did art just seem like this fantasy that would never happen? And the opportunities that have come up around that, by putting myself out there through saying, you know what, I'm a painter and here's my art page and I'm doing this thing. So that did also come out of this year. So
awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love that. And I think that I do think that there's like this silver linings conversation that isn't happening enough. I think people kind of think it's a little bit taboo because of how, terrible a lot of this shit is.
yeah,
But like, if people can't also acknowledge that like reality has a lot of things that happen simultaneously in it, like, yeah, you also had a cyst on your, your vocal cord. So it's like we talked about some terrible shit that happened to you already. It's not like this has been everything like sunshine and rainbows for you,
right.
but
Yeah, like also too, like I don't have kids. Like I when I share these things too, like all I can speak to is my journey. And I think my friends and I that have seen silver linings and had good things come out of this do feel like, like, because yes, people have also gotten really sick and people have lost loved ones, and absolutely. So it is not putting any of those things aside for sure.
right. Yeah. I just think that goes with the, like, just being reasonable, right? Just being
Yeah.
knowing that reality has a ton of things that happen simultaneously in parallel with each other. And like to be able to talk about the fact that like there was some good that came out of a very bad situation shouldn't be a touchy situation, or people shouldn't freak out on like, man, I can't believe that you'd even dare to talk about that whenever like people are sick and dying. It's like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
like we can have that conversation too. Also, that is also happening, but
Yeah.
like,
Right.
like the my existence in and of itself, is taking place as well.
And I mean, God, this could be a whole other topic, but I always feel like you want to look at the dark is there. You want to go into the deep, like we can go there, but also it's like, why not share the good? And I think sometimes people get put down for that, like you were just saying, celebrating the good. It's like, what is that, cocky or too much? But it's like, you want to dig into the sadness and the trauma, it's there. But also, like, why not talk about something great? You're getting to do this podcast. Art is happening for fundraising. Like, there is good, there is light.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. So what does the future hold for Sarah Wahl? Like what her yoga, her art, like
Hmm.
anything new in the works, any secrets you've been keeping that you're like ready to release to the world? Like what's the future? Do you have like do you have a beat on anything that you're seeing in like the long term?
I do. And it's funny you say it that way because it is something I was like playing close to the chest. Because I've gone through different businesses in my life, and sometimes you like put it out there too soon, and then you're like, you know what, that's not happening. But yeah, I just signed a contract with Venice Beach Collections. They have some prints of my art that will be launching in March on Rue La La and Rue Gilt. So you'll be able to buy wall art prints on their site coming up in March.
Very cool. Very cool. Well,
Yeah,
congratulations on that. That's very exciting.
thank you.
Um, so to kind of like wrap the whole thing up, I always kind of let the guest end as the interviewer. So, but you get to ask the people watching a question, anything that you've been wondering. So, anything that you are thinking about, wondering, want suggestions about, blah, 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 you can inquire to the guests and then they can fill in the comments with their answers.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Also, no pressure. Um, No, that's great. Well, I guess I would say, let me know what organizations you care about and you're interested in. And if there's a way that we can work together or raise money together for these people that you care about or anyone in need, let me know. I love to hear about whether it's, saving the ocean, helping kids that are going through traumatic situations, donating to food banks. If there's something you care about and I could learn more about, and then we can raise money for them, fill it in. Let's do it.
That's awesome. And considering like that's like what is like the only thing that seems to be exciting me these days is like people helping people. I love that you asked that question. Um, I guess lastly, like tell people where they can reach you, like your fundraiser information, your website, your social media, like all the things.
All the things. Yeah. So for this fundraiser, again, it ends on March 31st. So make sure you get your donations in before then. So for that, you're going to go to walkforkids.org/go to/grizzly. That's GRIZZLY. My art is on Instagram at Wahl Art Design. It's Wahl, my last name, WAHL. Wahlartdesign.com is my website, and you can check out my stuff there.
Awesome. Well, I mean, Jesus, thank you for doing this. I can't believe I don't even know how long we're truly on the actual episode. We're somewhere close to 2 hours. But thank you for your time, because I know that that's a thing that people value very highly these days. They've definitely have a new value for their time. I sure as hell do. Like that's why I don't want to ever go back into my office. I
Yeah.
now realize like that the commutes and the effort, just the effort in actually making the commute, not even the time so much, but like how it makes me feel when I leave, when I get there, like the amount of sleep that I can get, if I can, if I can sleep in a little bit longer, if I could just work from home, or if I have to beat traffic, whatever, like the value for my time has definitely changed during all of this. So I understand that time is definitely valuable to people right now, but I really, I was just like my attention was just completely captured when I saw your video talking about, the Camp Ronald McDonald thing. And I had to have you on. I'm so happy that you agreed to do it. And honestly, this was better than I could have imagined. I had so much fun. We went into all the areas.
Yes.
Um, so I mean, and I'd love to do it again. I'll just talk wildly with you forever if you'll let me.
Let me know. I'm already after this fundraiser. I already have the next one set up. So taking over the world through art and giving back is the jam over here. But
That's a good motto.
Yeah.
That's like a good tagline.
Yeah.
Would you say taking over the world through art and giving back?
Yeah.
That's a great tagline.
That's how I'll end it. Yeah, no, thank you for your time. I love a great conversation. I love sharing about this fundraiser and helping people and getting it out there and going through the beautiful spirals that we found.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good luck on the fundraiser. Shoot me that link and I'll put it, I'll attach it to this. I'll put in the information, and I like make a blog and kind of embed this video into the blog so I can put it in there and whatnot. So all the information will just be in one place. And yeah, I don't know. This is amazing. I had so much fun. I really do think that this was a great conversation to kind of like help me out of my funk. I was in a pretty bad one for a little bit there. So I thank you for that as well. And I don't know, have a great rest of your day. I won't eat up too much more of your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will see you again. We'll do this again.
Yes. Amen.